Okay, we should be live, and everything looks pretty good, to be honest. I'm just gonna move the Zoom panel a little bit so that everybody can see what they want to see. And okay, John, can you say something, or Josh, so that I can look at the audio?
Hello.
Test one, two, three.
That should sound pretty good. All right, let me let folks know that we are live. And despite all of our technical difficulties, we are streaming to Facebook, YouTube, Twitch, and Instagram simultaneously. So we are on 4 platforms right now. Okay. Well, I guess thank you to everybody who submitted questions and is here for our first question and answer session. Um, the way that we're going to do this is that if people send in questions or comments via Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, or Twitch in the comment section, John and I are going to be looking at all of that. We're going to be helping moderate. So you can submit any questions that you have there. And we have some questions that have been set in prior, and we're going to be going through all of those as well. But first, if you want to introduce yourself, Josh, and talk a little bit about your campaign.
Okay. Hey everybody. My name is Josh Bradley. I'm running for City Council at large this year. I'm running to represent the workers in the city of Raleigh. Apparently, it seems that, especially in the last 2 years, but in general, the focus has been on business owners and developers, often at the expense of workers. We live in a time where it's getting almost impossible to afford to be able to live within the city unless you're a very highly compensated worker. But unfortunately, or fortunate, which is unfortunate that you have to be so wealthy in order to have an easy time living in the city, because there are a lot of people that aren't paid as well, that are definitely not paid as well as they should be, but are not paid enough to afford to live in the city, that are necessary in the running of the city. As a society, we're made up is made up of people from all across the spectrum, and it's important that the people that do the work, that interact with the guests, that serve people food, that teach our children, to put out fires, to come and take the trash, are all able to live close by to the city, especially at the current level of gentrification, which is pushed out pretty far from the borders of the city. So you have to drive pretty far to come to Raleigh to work, if you want to find an affordable place to live, truly affordable. I know affordable housing is talked about quite a bit. And then they throw AMIs and stuff at you, 85% of AMI, 30%, 50%. But when it comes down to, for a home to be truly affordable, you should be able to cover it with your wage at no more than 33% of your monthly income. So if you make minimum wage affordable housing, that number is, with rent and utilities, should be under 330 some odd dollars. So people at the spectrum, even up and above 15, are having a hard time to find truly affordable housing in the city. And one of the things that I'm trying to focus on is housing, but there are a lot of other things that I have some opinions on and involved to make this a great city to live, not just for the wealthy or the upwardly mobile middle class, but for everybody that lives here. So it's a little bit about me. I'm a member of the Green Party of North Carolina. And we are petitioning to get on the ballot. And we have a really, really good Senate candidate named Matthew Ho that you should check out. And I'm also a member of the Socialist Party USA. So definitely a worker focus. But okay, Haley, anything else you need from me?
No, I don't think so. What I will do is I will go ahead and put links to your social media.
Awesome.
Yeah. So links to your socials are up now. So if people want to learn more about the campaign, you can go to our campaign website, our Facebook, our Instagram, our Twitter. As you can see, we now have Twitch and YouTube set up as well. I'm going to put the link tree in the chat for everybody. And you can get links for all of this just from that one link tree link. Okay. So, John, do you want to start going through some of the questions that were submitted?
Okay. Do we have the questions? Where are they?
Oh, yeah. Let me send you the document for that. But I can start us up with the first one. In the meantime, I think this is a good one to start with. This is from AMGENOEV on Twitter. And they ask, what do you think you can realistically accomplish in a 2-year term?
That is a good question. And a lot about what the end result would be of an election would have to do with who else wins, right? If I were to win and I was the only, progressive or left candidate on the city council, and I got voted down every time, at the very least I could bring issues up to the public in general, and to be a spot of resistance against this developer run and led city council. With any luck, though, we've got a lot of good candidates that care about that care about what's going on and about the people in the city. So hopefully it's not just me that wins. Hopefully it's myself, Mary Black, Jane Harrison, Christina Jones, and Wanda Hunter. And then if we get a good team on there, then we can actually do affect changes, other than shaming the rest of the city council. If I'm the only one on there that's not bought by the developers, I can definitely oppose any things that are brought to the table that are not in the interest of the working class. In addition to that, I will always have an open door, and I can actually, whereas a majority on the city council could pretty much quash communications, but I could be an open door for workers to get they'll be heard at the very least. But with any luck, we'll win more than just my seat. So we'll have hopefully have a majority on council that actually cares about the workers of the city. Hopefully that answers the question.
I think so. So I'm gonna take a look at, and this kind of leads into this other question by Oak Observer on Twitter, asks, how will you interact with community members once in office?
How will I work? Well, I mean, what's going to happen is when I win this election, I'm going to lose my job. The current city council is planning on giving the city council a raise to not an extensive amount of money, but enough that's doable to where I could actually just be a city councilor, and that therefore have my office door open at all times. I'll have my cell phone number out for everybody to talk to, and I will try to be out in the community and meet with groups that are having issues with the city, or people that have ideas with city. And I'll even meet with people that do things that I oppose, just because it's always good to have an open dialogue. But I'm going to be there to represent the workers, the people that aren't wealthy, the people that don't have all the breaks to make everything a little bit easier in their living situation. But in saying that, like, it's I will devote all of my resources and time in order to do that. So, I mean, my door will always be open, and I will go out, try to keep a steady dialogue with, with the government employees union, with, city workers and people that don't work for the city that are just workers, because it's important that we, support the people that actually make the city thrive.
All right. So we have a couple of questions that people submitted, unsurprisingly, about transit and housing. The first of which is from Hua, and he asks, what is your take on Raleigh's missing middle housing? What are some of the shortcomings that you see with the concept, and how might you tackle it differently?
Well, missing middle doesn't really address affordability, right? It's just saying that they're saying that the city of Raleigh doesn't have, that they don't think has enough townhouses and duplexes and smaller stuff between apartments and, and mansions, right? But it's not specifically designed in order to help affordability. It's just trying to create another option that potentially is less expensive than mansions and McMansions, but doesn't really address the need of affordability. I think that the last housing bond, folk put a lot of attention on that, and they're going to give a lot of money towards that. But when it comes down to it, what we need to do is we need to use city land to build housing that is affordable to the workers in the city, and we need to use some of that money to actually build housing for people that are unhoused. The city has land, the city has money, we can do it. There's no reason we should stop. And focusing it all on a specific type of housing without talking about the affordability of housing in general or that housing in specific, it just seems to be a distraction from the real problem, which is not a lot of people can really afford to live in the city if they're working regular jobs. Is that okay?
Yeah, that's good. Sorry, I think John should have the document now. Are you ready to take over?
Yeah.
Okay.
Another question from Wa. How will you restore and reintegrate nature and biodiversity into the city while preventing capitalist developers from profiting and using it as an excuse to gentrify marginalized communities and neighborhoods?
Well, as far as biodiversity is something to talk about in itself, and that we need to stop letting developers use non-native plants. We need to not bring any more invasive species that we can help it into the city. I think that we need to look at density and zoning and the greenway and the nature areas, but we need to do it in such a way that is responsible environmentally, and also it's important not to use that as an excuse to gentrify or to push people out of the city. I mean, if you look at an instance that happened not too long ago, they zoned very dense market rate / luxury tier housing right beside Horseshoe Nature Preserve at 5 stories, which would potentially lead to light pollution. And it's a nature preserve, and like the construction right on the ridge above a nature preserve, and just the density there where it's not really called for, it's not on public transit, and it doesn't really help anybody except for the people that can afford to pay for market rate housing and luxury housing, which is not a whole lot of people. So, it was said that, well, they could just develop it if they want it now based on current zoning laws, but yeah, it would be a lot less dense then. And, having a lot of density right on the border of nature preserves doesn't necessarily make sense, especially if it's a situation where it's not going to benefit the majority of the people. It's just going to benefit all these people that are going to be these upwardly mobile, middle class that are going to be moving into the city as, Apple comes and as the other industries, big companies come in. When they import their executive level people, that might benefit them, but it's a net loss for, the nature preserve, obviously, and it doesn't really help the people that live and work in the city of Raleigh right now. Hope that was helpful.
Yep. And the next question we have from at AEIO Union. They are asking, the housing crisis in Raleigh is often framed as a false dichotomy between build or don't build. People throw their hands up and say, what are you going to do? That's the market. What are the priority housing policies you will pursue beyond the rezoning questions? Rent control?
I am 100% in favor of rent control. I'm 100% in favor of using city resources instead of selling land to developers to actually, if we need to, hire an architect and hire a superintendent and hire people to actually, build housing instead of letting the market decide it, because the market doesn't really care about anything except for profits for the people that are doing the investing and the developing. We need to get away from a market solution, because the markets tend to lead towards monopoly and tend to push people out and to maximize profit, which I guess is good for a business, but we're a city, we're not a business. It's often said that if that person should just run the government like a business, that's a really scary proposition, because at work, you have to do what your boss tells you. You don't have as much freedom at work as you do when you're not at work. So if we when people say you need to run the city or, the country like a business, you're basically talking about autocracy, because that's the way businesses are run. We need more democracy in the workplace. Yeah, and it is a false dichotomy, but it's not really a false dichotomy between build or not build. The whole YIMBY-NIMBY thing doesn't mean anything. That's just two different groups of supporting developers in their own unique way. But I think it's important that we focus on making it livable for everybody. And right now, the only people that are benefiting by any of this rezoning are the wealthy, because when it comes down to it, most people can't afford to buy houses in the city if they work a job in the city, unless they're high level. And there's also a situation whereas if you bought a house before the housing went up, like I did, they say that my townhouse has doubled in value since I bought it, which sounds like a good idea, I guess, except that if I were to sell it today, I couldn't afford to buy anything else. My taxes have gone up. And then anytime that property values increase, in my neighborhood, I have a lot of neighbors that I like that are renting, and that just pushes their rent up. And so there's not really an advantageous way to benefit from having the market do weird housing things. I think it's important that we as a city need to hold the line, and other than just zoning, but actually invest time and money to actually build up what we need without waiting for the investors to come in and try to help us out, except make a whole lot of profit. Hopefully.
All right. Next we have at AM Genove, AMGENOVE on Twitter, and they're asking, where do you think we can realistically implement bus rapid transit where it will be used, wanted, and efficient?
Wow, rapid transit sounds like a good idea at the time. I'm not opposed to bus rapid transit at all, as long as it connects communities that need it. The problem with the way it's being handled right now has to do with the zoning of the transit corridors. I think that if you end up rezoning the transit corridors to encourage more business and more luxury and market rate housing, then you're going to push the people that would actually use public transit away from using public transit. Like if you build a transit corridor down, Western Boulevard, and all of a sudden the rents go up really high around Western Boulevard because their access to that bus rapid transit, because it sounds like a good idea at the time. I think that, then the people that are more likely to use the bus rapid transit will not be able to afford to live in the transit corridor. So I think that bus rapid transit sounds like a good idea. We need more public transportation. It needs to be free at point of use. And we need to expand our public transit to where the necessity for having a car goes way down for environmental reasons. Like, you can't Tesla our way out of this, because even if you're driving a Tesla, you're basically driving a nuclear powered car or a coal powered. I don't know what our plan is. I know Sharon Harris is down there. I don't know if we get our electricity directly from them, but that's not going to get it away. That's not going to help us what we need. If we need bus rapid transit, we need to make sure that we're doing it down corridors where people will actually use it, and plan for the gentrification effect in general, but I mean, we need to try to halt that. And when we do zoning, we need to make sure that the people that would use the bus rapid transit will be able to afford to live near bus rapid transit. Hopefully.
All right. Yep, that was good. And we have another question from Wah in the chat. And they say there's a lot of talk about the push for affordable housing, that it cannot be done at the city level. The city council tends to say that their hands are tied because of the NCGA. What will you do to advocate for affordable housing, knowing the limitations?
Well, there's a couple of ways to talk about that. First of all, the current city council has friends that are good enough at the North Carolina General Assembly to give them a year of unelected governance. So obviously they've got connections there, and I'm surprised they haven't tried to push for inclusionary zoning. And it's often brought up that you cannot have affordability as a factor when you're considering zoning in the city. The city attorney has said it on multiple occasions. But I would say if that's the case, what we should do is halt all rezoning until such time as the General Assembly gives us the power to require inclusionary zoning. I think when it comes down to it, that's an excuse that people use, and they throw up their hands and let downtown South get zoned, and other things that are generators of gentrification that are pushing people out get zoned because, hey, we can't consider inclusionary, we can't do inclusionary zonings. It's important that if we don't have the power to do that, then if we halt all rezonings, eventually there'll be all these developers will go to their friends or employees at the North Carolina General Assembly and try to hopefully make things happen to where it becomes allowed, and we don't have to worry about the city attorney saying that we can't do it. And the other thing is, another option that I've thought about is if we could just do it, require it, and then have them sue us, and then take it to the state Supreme Court. Now that we've got a not uber conservative state Supreme Court, and then have it thrown out on civil rights charges. Have the law that prevents us from doing it overturned due to it being discriminatory. Hope that gives you an idea where my head is.
It does. I have another question in chat asking, how does the rent go up because of bus rapid transit? This might be a good opportunity to explain what the transit overlay district is and how it incentivizes development alongside transit corridors.
Yeah, and it's kind of what I mentioned before. If you're how you zone the transit corridor is going to affect what kind of housing you have there. So when they create the overlay district, what they're going to do is they're going to set zoning conditions that would around their concept of what they're planning for the city. And what basically that means is that a lot of the zoning that goes along will be for maybe missing middle housing, but certainly not necessarily affordable housing. And when I say affordable housing, I mean affordable to workers. When I say I'm not talking about people that make $60,000 a year. I'm talking about people that work for a living. And because the wealthy can always find a place to live, and chances are they're not going to use the public transit. I think that as far as the overlay districts they're put out, if there were a way to get it zoned and ensure that they remained affordable for most people, that could be a tool in order to make it to where people will actually use the buses. But my biggest concern with the transit overlay district is that they're not really considering any of that. I mean, from the discussions that I've seen and the talks I've participated in, they're kind of throwing up their hands and say, well, I mean, it kind of sucks, but there's nothing we can do. And I think that if you're not careful, you're going to end up having a transit corridor with bus rapid transit where people won't be able to afford to live. Does that John or Haley, am I missing that?
No, that sounds great. We have another question from someone on Twitch asking, how can we keep growth coming to the city and protect those who are of lower income? In a city that can be considered the gateway of the South, growth is guaranteed, but how would you strong-arm corporate superpowers like Kane go build affordable housing within city limits that to companies like them projects are a detriment to profits from a completed project?
Go slower.
So I think that they are asking, how do you balance the fact that Raleigh is such a fast-growing city, and balancing the fact that there are companies like Kane Realty that are highly competitive and are trying to buy up land and develop really incredibly expensive housing. How do you balance that against the need for affordable housing in the city? Like, how do you have both growth but also low income and affordable housing?
Well, I mean, you've got, I mean, the first thing we don't want to do is we don't want to incentivize luxury and market rate housing. Not initially. The growth is going to happen. Like, I mean, people are moving here at a ridiculous clip. And I don't think anything that we're going to do is going to slow down growth, right? I think that what we should do as a city, first of all, is to make sure that the people that are representing the city aren't all in the pockets of Kane Realty or York or any of the other developers that are buying up. A lot of people are buying up. A lot of corporations in general are buying up houses and then flipping them and then making it more expensive for people to live, which is, I guess, good if you're coming from San Francisco, because I mean, it's so expensive to live in San Francisco. It will be cheaper here by comparison, but the last thing we need is to be to have it as expensive to live in Raleigh as it is in San Francisco. And I think if the city crafts its ordinances and work with communities before we even bring the developers in. I mean, back during when they had the CACs, one of the things that, it wasn't binding, but they would encourage the developers to actually have to pitch it to the CACs, because the CACs could, in fact, would vote on whether or not to approve zonings and stuff. And that, for good or for ill, put more people in front of the developers before they do it. The other thing we could do is encourage community agreements, right? When you're building with developers, to strongly encourage them, and by whatever thing we could do to have community benefit agreements that are written in and approved by the community that are going to be affected. Another thing that we could do, and this might be a little esoteric, but if we progressivize the property tax, in addition to progressivizing the property tax, we grandfather in people that have longtime residents in. And the way that would work is the city has the tax authority to raise, and I don't remember the percentage now, 1% of the property tax, right? Most of it goes to the county, but some of it goes to the city. And the city determines at what level it does. So what we could do, considering the fact that housing is shooting up, is what we do is we can give a small tax decrease for people whose houses are worth up to $250,000, $300,000, and then keep it the same as the current value for the next $100,000 of valuation between, $250,000 and $350,000, that you'll pay the same tax rate that you're paying now. And then for every 100,000 evaluation above that, you raise property taxes by, you know, 10 cents per $1,000, so like a percent or a portion of a percent, 0.1%, for every $100,000 of value, and then earmark all the money that you're going to be making, because there are houses that are made for a whole lot more than that, and use that money, direct that money into actually building housing for workforce, for the unhoused, and stuff like that. And then as long as you have a caveat that is built into the law saying that people that are in danger of being gentrified, whose taxes, their home values are going up, even though they just happen to be neighbors of people, are grandfathered in. If you've lived in your house for more than 10 years, then we are going to hold your tax value steady. And then that's a way to discourage high-end development, but at the same time use any of the greedy impulses of the bourgeois developers and take that extra property tax and turn it around and put it into, increase housing that's affordable, to contribute to the community. And yeah.
Okay, I think we are going to go to questions from the campaign collective now.
Okay.
The first question is, how do you balance increasing density and infrastructure that is centered around public transit while also addressing the ever-increasing need for affordable and low-income housing?
Well, I mean, anytime that infrastructure, and it's going to come down with the way that our city is organized. We have a manager council organization, right? So the executive is the city manager, and the city council are the ones that, I wouldn't say advisors, but they're the ones that try to create policy, and it's up for the city manager and the city to propose it. So, I mean, that limits kind of the power one would have, but how would I balance the increasing density? Affordable and not. The thing about public transit is that the people that use public transit are workers. You don't see a whole lot of the wealthy on public transit. And so when we build transit corridors, I think that we need to do what we can to protect the neighborhoods that they're going through from gentrification. And a lot of that's going to depend on the ability to control the zoning into the area and determine what the zoning is going to look like. And we need to make sure that if we're planning like bus rapid transit or transit in general, that we need to make sure that it's getting to the people that need it, right? Because maybe it's cool to have a fast bus in front of your house, but if you're not going to ride said bus, then it's just kind of, hey, we're in the future, and not, I need this bus to get to where I need to go. So the thing about when you're building around public transit infrastructure, the developers are going to use it as an opportunity to make money, and you don't make money building affordable housing. You make money building luxury housing. So, a lot of that will have to deal with how it gets zoned and whether or not to even rezone transit corridors, depending on what happens. I think that one thing to consider is to consider mass transit instead of doing specialized, 4-directional bus rapid transit. We just need to increase the amount of buses, right? We need to make sure that we have the infrastructure to handle, potential riders, and even if doing so is an expense of the people that are driving, because when it comes down to it, public transit is important, and it's much more sustainable than everybody driving around in a car. Even if that car is a Prius or a Tesla, I'm not saying that they're bad. I'm just saying that they're not. There's a lot of stuff involved in the building of them that aren't necessarily environmentally friendly. So public transit needs to be prioritized. Public mass transit needs to be prioritized. And when we're designing stuff around public transit, we need to make sure that we're protecting the people that need to use it. And one of the city's options is zoning, about whether or not to rezone. And then if the city has land along the transit corridors, the city should actually build affordable housing and not leave it to the developers. Because if we have the land is valuable. We need to use it. We don't need to offload it for cheap for developers for 5-year bumps and for 5%, 5% of the units being affordable. We need to realize that we need to focus on the people that do the work in the city and not the rich people that sit back and take advantage of our labor.
Okay, sounds good. And we have another question from the campaign collective. If you had to pick 3 policies, goals, objectives, or frameworks that define your campaign, what would they be?
Yikes! Only 3. The housing crisis is one, and actually the general protection of the people that work for the city that is my primary goal. I'm not campaigning. I'm not trying to win the votes of the bourgeois developers or people's bosses. I want to do what I can to help the people that actually do work. There's lots of things that are in place in our city that just need to be, made better. Like they finally passed a non-discrimination ordinance, finally. But it's kind of a watered down version of the counties. But in the 2019 election, and I know this because I ran in 2019, there was a pledge that when HB2 sunsetted, when the atrocious transphobic bathroom bill that Governor McCrory and the NCGA passed, after it did all the damage it did to North Carolina, just seeing as an intolerant, bigoted state and people canceling events in the state because this state was perceived as intolerant and bigoted. Everybody that ran, except for I think David Naidas didn't sign it, signed that as soon as it sunset, as soon as HB2 allowed you to put a non-discrimination ordinance on the book, that they would put a strong one in. But it took them almost 2 years in order to get that done. And then they didn't really do anything except just take a portion of what the county had already done and said, well, it kind of applies here. We'll just take it. I think that we need in this city to make sure that everybody, whether they're regardless of their gender identity or gender presentation or, regardless of who people love, regardless of, what people's background is, what people's income level is, we need to make sure that it is a safe and empowering city to live in. And just doing lip service and putting a weak sauce non-discrimination ordinance, I think is a shame considering that everybody made a promise to do it. And their excuses were like, I don't want to get sued, but at sometimes you've got to just stand up and then take care of it. If the state sues us, let the state sue us. But at least we did something standing up for people in the city. The other thing is and that's has to do with policing and how we consider crime and crime reduction and how to handle it. Statistically, the only way to reduce crime that has statistically been proven to work, and it has been shown to work, is to lift people out of poverty. Like, more police officers don't do it. So I think what we need to do and what we need to consider in the city is we need to, that what policing we have should be community controlled, and it should be really community controlled, not just have an advisory board. They need to be able to subpoena people. They need to be able to discipline people. But even more than that, what we need to do is we need to disassemble what we have in our policing model and create a model to where you have people to actually protect and preserve, right? And to serve. Because right now, modern police departments have been told in several Supreme Court cases that they are neither obligated to protect or serve. So so what happens is that they tend to be the tools of the wealthy and to oppress the people that they don't want, want to push out. So I think instead of hiring more police officers, what we need to do is we need to hire more social workers, right? We need to give police the training they need to be able to react to situations. We need to vet them to make sure they're not affiliated with white supremacist organizations. And we need to, pretty much disassemble the current policing model and replace it with something that is protective, that protects people and protects lives over anything else. And we need to also use some of the money that we would normally spend for policing to build community health centers, do what we can to lift people up, because when you lift people up, they're less likely to commit crimes. So I'm not saying that the city will not have anybody that I envision a completely disarmed police department. I think that it needs to be, the majority need to be disarmed. I think there needs to be a very small, very well vetted and very well trained and very well controlled section that in case of an emergency has access to weapons. But by and large, I don't think, I think unarmed police are the way to go. And I think that if we disassemble the current policing model, which is basically based on slave patrols, and then have it replaced with something that's actually affirming and is out there to protect lives and protect people, then I think that the city will be better for everybody, especially for people that are traditionally oppressed, which tend to have terrible relations with the police. So I would say policing, and then justice and equality, and workers' ability to live in the situation. So the empowerment of workers, and and the ability to afford to live in the city. I know that's not 3. I normally use 5, and I try to think I've got it around 4, or 3.5, or 4 there.
That's okay. We have 2 more questions from the campaign collective, and we will ask any questions that pop up on the live stream as well. The next question is what commitments have you made regarding campaign funding and donations? Will you accept donations or endorsements from developers, fossil fuel companies, or executives, or police unions?
I will absolutely not take money from developers, certainly not from police, certainly not from fossil fuel companies or the bosses. Like, I'm not running that kind of campaign. I'm here to represent the people. While donations are helpful and we need donations, if I got a donation from one of the developers or from the police union, I can't imagine they would, or any kind of corporate donation, I would send it back. It's not worth it to me, because I'm not willing to compromise my principles because it would make it easier to get elected because you have more money. I think that we are trying to be a people-powered campaign, and we are here basically to give workers a seat at the table, which is now currently owned by the developer. So I absolutely will not take any money from fossil fuels executives, from corporations, from developers, from anybody else. And if that hurts me in the long run, it hurts me in the long run. But I'm going to stand on my principle and not take that kind of money from anybody. Because and the other thing to bring up when you say that, when that question is asked, is what we need to do as a city is hold our electeds accountable. So if people are taking money from all these people, which I absolutely will not do, some people will, but if people do, they should sign a pledge to recuse themselves from decisions that are related to those donors. And that if you get max campaign donations from developers, then anytime a rezoning involving the developers or the developers associated with the developers that gave you money, you should recuse yourself from doing that, because it's undue influence. I think that I would hope, and I know this isn't the case currently, that if people take large if the people, the kind of people that can do the mental arithmetic and sleep at night by taking money from the bourgeois developers and then make it and then not think, and be beholden to them, then they should absolutely pledge to recuse themselves from anything from that are put on the table from large donors, if they really are concerned with the people of the city and not just the people that hold their leash.
All right. The next question says that you have a policy about creating buffer zones around reproductive health clinics in the city. Can you explain that policy a bit more for people who may not be familiar with the idea of a buffer zone and why you think they are necessary?
Well, I would say reproductive health is really important. Services like abortion and gender affirming care and stuff are very important to people. In fact, I know a lot of the women I know get their health coverage almost exclusively at Planned Parenthood. The problem with what's happening is that you get all these the pro-birth protesters that are out there and will say terrible things about people and yell at people and do everything they can to interfere with that. And I think in some cities have been able to do it. I think Charlotte did it, and it wouldn't just be around reproductive health clinics. It would be around all healthcare facilities. That you would have a pretty wicked noise ordinance, a pretty that's operated during business hours out a couple of blocks around each one, to where people can't scream, people can't do anything like that, and it will make it less. It will make it safer for people that need the services, whether it needs to be abortion, women's care, gender affirming stuff. I think these are medical decisions that are not ever taken lightly, that people have thought about, and they need to be able to do what they're going to do. I mean, bodily autonomy is important, and I think that the way it is right now, it's kind of do what you want to do, and it leads to scary situations. There was a person that had brought a gun to one of the pro-birth people, had a gun, shot themselves at the protest, and that, or at at their little demonstration, and that can't go on. I'm not saying that I want to have cops on every corner, but I think that all health facilities should have the tools in the toolbox that they need to make sure that they can offer a safe and affirming environment for people that need their services, regardless of what that is.
All right, and we have another question from the chat, and they're asking, do you see the city council as having a role in dealing with rent controls or preventing slumlords from evicting tenants?
I would say evictions are handled by the sheriff's department. If you have a sheriff that could sleep at night, they could just not do evictions. I think the city has a place in setting policy, and I think that whether the city has real authority, how much real authority the city has to do it, other than try to create regulations is such to where landlords can't get away with being landlords or slumlords. We don't need those people in there. I mean, there are things that the government has the power of eminent domain. So, if it gets bad enough, I think the city has the ability to take it over. I think the one thing the city can do is actually communicate tenants' rights, right? And help set up tenant organizations, especially with the slumlords, but with everybody that rents. In theory, the people on Section 8 housing, according to HUD, have to have actually a seat at the table in the housing authority, and they have to be funded based on HUD rules. That affects people that are in public housing, but I think that could be extended around. The city should have a policy of encouraging organization among tenants, because people together have a stronger voice than one person, right? So when we're united we're stronger. But as far as, other than crafting policies that make it really hard for slumlords to do work and to penalize them when they can, I think that definitely we need to work as somebody that has rented from slumlords in the city of Raleigh, to the point to where it was a long time ago, but I remember renting an apartment that I could see the subfloor beside the bathtub. Like it was pretty bad. There was a stray cat in the neighborhood that the landlord was like, "Don't let that cat in there." But if we closed all the doors and locked and closed all the windows, the cat could still get in there because of holes in the superstructure. So, as somebody that has rented from and been burned by slumlords, I think that we need to make sure that we give the people the resources that they need to fight things like eviction. And I think we should be proactive about it. We need to have regular meetings and regular seminars and get out into the community and try to check on people that are out living there and actually get out of the office and go and visit places and talk to people, because it's part of what representing the people is about, is getting out and learning about it. I think that every tool we have in the toolbox we should use to do what we can to ensure that everybody is taken care of to the level that they are, because slumlords aren't necessarily cheap. They just tend to let other things slide. So I paid a lot of rent for some really crappy places, but depending on your credit and depending on what your income is, sometimes it's your only choice. But we need to hold people to accountable, and the primary focus of the city should be making sure its citizens are taken care of.
All right, that was our last question. I think we're gonna wait for a few minutes for more questions.
I just saw one more in the chat asking, do you have any thoughts about the recent organizing at Starbucks and Amazon, and how might you envision the city extend that to efforts in other workplaces?
Well, now I am a big supporter of the Starbucks union and the Amazon union and unions in general. I think that, again, like I was saying on the last question, together we're stronger, and workers are the ones that actually create the value. So workers should get the benefit of the value that they create, rather than have it taken by the investor class and run away with it. So I think the city, there's a couple of things the city could do. I think the city should be involved in educating people to what unions are and the benefits of unions. I think we live in the South. We live in a quote right to work state, which basically means right to work for less. And I think what we need to do is not only lift up the unions that we have, we need to disseminate the information about organizing and support it where we can, and encourage people to look into it and try to fight all this propaganda campaign against unions that have been going on in the South for a long time, and is why the poorest states in the country, for the most part, are non-union states. So I think that it goes to helping lift people out of poverty. You need to get people that get in situations to where they can organize, because if you're a business, a small business, you're a corporation, you cannot work without employees. And if you don't treat employees and employees are not able to work in said environment and survive and thrive, then what are you doing? If you're not able to provide, it's important that the people that actually do the work get the benefit of their work. I think union organizing in general is very helpful. I think that, again, together we're stronger than we are individually. And I think it's important that we support the Starbucks unions, the Amazon unions, UE 150, the government employee unions, the firefighters. We need to, and then we need to do what we can to encourage at least tell people what it really is, other than just the same corporate propaganda that the corporate office will send out to all their affiliates every couple of years, every time they're concerned about it. We need to actually have to be able to teach people the benefits of doing it. And we have people that have been successful in this city that could help do that. I mean, there was a, UE 150 held a strike not too long ago for concessions, and it worked. And it's just, there's so much that we could do as workers to help protect ourselves. And I think unity is our biggest strength, because without the people that do the work, the investors and the bosses have nothing. Because I'll give the hotel example. If you have a hotel on a weekend, chances are there's a good chance you don't have managers, or at least high level managers, and you don't have investors, and the work gets done. But if you had a situation where it was just the investor and just the high level manager, without the people that clean the rooms and, perform the maintenance and check people in, then they would not be able to make any money. So like, the people that do the work are the ones that should benefit primarily from the value that they create. And a way to do that is to get people together and talk. And talk about how much you make, and talk about with your coworkers to make sure that everybody's on the same page. Because anything that they can do to divide us, that they'll use it, and they'll use it to their advantage, not to ours. So I hope that answers it.
Yeah, definitely. All right, so I'm going to send in links to all of the chats with the campaign link tree, as well as donation links, and a link to sign up to volunteer for us. Volunteering will be closer to the election date, but then that way, if people want to go ahead and be on our volunteer list, they can. So while I'm doing that, do you have any final thoughts for people?
Well, it's just, we live in a city that's one of the fastest growing cities in the country. And people are saying that, that if you just let them build, the developers build what they want to, eventually it'll force prices to go down. But that's not going to happen until such time as we're not the third fastest growing metropolitan area in the country. We don't have time to wait for that. So we need to be proactive and encouraging affordable, safe place to live. And we don't need to be spending over 50% of our budget to pay the police. We need to use more of that money, take it specifically out of the police budget, and use it to lift people out of poverty, build up the communities, especially the poor and impacted and historically oppressed communities. And I think it's something really important. And I think that it's important that when you vote for a city councilor, vote for somebody that you think that can sleep at night without guilt. And that's, there's certain things that I'm not going to support because I couldn't sleep at night. Like, if I'm promoting policies that gentrify people out of their houses, or hurt, historically oppressed communities, or anybody, then I'm not going to be able to sleep at night. But if you've got people that can do all that stuff and then still sleep just good, fine in the morning, then they're probably not the best people in the most moral way to run a city. And like, we're not a business, we're a city, we're a community, we work together. And it's important that we do what we can together to make the changes that we need to help everybody, to lift everybody up. And in order to do that, we've just got to get the message out. I'm going to say that I'm definitely not going to take developer money. I'm definitely not going to take fossil fuel money or corporate money. And I know that the people that I'm here to represent are, as the working class, we don't have a lot of money to give. But I would say any little bit that could help would be helpful, because we're running against people that are going to outraise us. And if it's not money, if you have time to volunteer, if you have time just to spread the message, to get it out there, it would be helpful. Because the thing about running a campaign on the left is the media doesn't want to hear what you have to say, because if you say it out loud, then other people might hear it. So they tend to support candidates that they've already chosen or their owners have chosen. So the way to defend that is to get out and try to organize in the community where you can. So any help that you can give, whether that be a little money, whether that be a little time, or at least just talking about the campaign, or even if not just talking about the campaign, talking about what we can do to work together to make this city a livable city for the working people here. And thank you.
Yeah, there is one more question that I missed. I want to make sure that we get this one.
Okay.
Wanda Gilbert Coker asks, how do you propose the city inform people about tenant rights?
Well, if it were up to me, I would shout it from the rooftops. I would create mailers to send out to everybody that lives in a rental unit. I would host regularly weekly seminars, and I would send city staff and city councilors into apartment communities, and especially public housing, but not just public housing, in apartment communities too, and just plaster them with information, get the word out, and not just not by randomly putting a yard sign in front of that to where people have to drive by and hit it with their phone scanner QR code. Like, I mean, the city needs to make an effort to show, what you can do as a tenant, because without tenants, landlords don't make money. So, and again, we're stronger together. So I think the city should devote resources, like serious resources, into getting the information out to the people that need it, and not airdropping, not putting up signs occasionally, but getting out into the communities and participating into the communities, whether they be public housing, whether they be apartment rentals. I mean, we need to actually spend time and resources to get out and let people know what rights they have, and the advantages of working together. Because what it comes down to is, if we work together, we're strong. Um, and while the people that are holding power now, and the people that are holding power in our society now, are able to do that for money. Uh, and not just that they have money, that they keep us divided. So together we're stronger. Uh, and yeah, I think the city should really make an effort, and the city should also make an effort to counter all the pro corporate propaganda that comes down in the cities, right? Like, we're not a corporation. We're here for the people, so we need to protect the people sometimes from, you know money and the oligarchy and the bourgeois.
All right. I think that is everything. I'm going to check the chats one more time, but I think we got all of the questions. Thank you to everybody who submitted questions ahead of time, and who stayed for the stream and submitted questions live. This was our first live stream, and it was kind of difficult setting everything up to stream to 4 platforms simultaneously, but I think we learned a lot, and it will go a lot more smoothly in the future. But I just want to say thank you to everybody. I'm going to go ahead and put our social media graphic up so everybody can see it now. I manage Josh's social media pages, so if you ever want to get in touch with us, please check them out. I've posted the link tree in all of the chats, so you can go to that and follow us. Send us more questions if you want to, so we can do this again in the future. Reach out to us if you want to volunteer, if you want to donate, or if you just want to learn more about the campaign. And other than that, I think we're good.
Yeah, and just if you want to send an email to me and critique my performance or my platform or anything, just email Bradley for Raleigh Workers at gmail.com, and that will come to the campaign collective. But I will definitely see that. So I'm interested in hearing from what everybody has to say.
All right. With that, I think we're gonna go ahead and end stream if everybody's good.
Yep.
All right. Thanks.
Thanks, comrades.